Connecting my vacuum pump back up. And what I'll do is we'll pull off the high side. Just to open the high side valve, I'm leaving this one closed. And my wife's gonna love me. I have a container. I'm not prepared for small measurements of liquid. So I have 1/3 of a cup, or 80 milliliters. It says 80 milliliters. For us in the Imperial system, I think it's called the US system of what we use, there's 8 ounces in a cup. So do your math. That's divided by 3. What's 8 divided by 3 is 2.66 ounces. There's a bunch of sixes there, but so just over 2.5 ounces. I decided to go a little bit more in this system. I think I told you it holds about 4.5. We're going 2.5 just because I want to make sure this compressor has lubricant. I'd rather maybe have a little bit more than not enough. I'm not sure. Like I said, I described to you guys a scenario where too much oil was really bad too. Alright, so low side gauge is closed, high side is open, pulling vacuum here. So I'm attached, right now vacuum's attached to the red side or high side. And what I'm going to do, take this off, and I'm going to just suck it in. That's what's nice about having a vacuum pump. If you don't have a vacuum pump, you have to put it in the lines manually. Real pain in the butt. And I'll admit to you guys, I've done some air conditioning repairs, some backyard repairs, where, you know, I'm not pulling the system under a vacuum because, you know, it might be a really old car and no one cares. But you do not want moisture in an air conditioning system. And you won't see it right away. It might not be a couple years till a couple years later that you end up with an issue. But anyway. Okay. So now what I've generally done in the past for the rest of this, and I don't know that it necessarily matters, but I don't open this one back up. I'll leave it closed because I didn't want to pull any oil out of the system and back into my vacuum pump. I don't think that would happen. But just personal preference. I'm just going to continue to pull on the high side. You can see that it's pulling the low side into a vacuum too. Let me get you onto the gauge so you can see it. And we want to be very close to 30 inches of vacuum on these systems. I don't remember the numbers exactly, but I think a perfect vacuum is 30 inches. And it's not achievable here. In space only. So we get as low as we can. Again, this system right now, I'm pulling vacuum from the center. That's open. Let's close that. Make sure these are tight. Vacuum from the center. This valve's open, so we're going down into the high side of the system. It's pulling on the system, and you can see we have a vacuum on the low side even as well. So you don't need this open. The other reason I don't want to open this, or the other reason that I put oil in the low side, is when I charge this thing, I'm going to charge from the low side. So when I start putting refrigerant in, we'll go yellow hose, we'll have refrigerant, high side will be closed, and we'll blow the refrigerant in this way, and then that will help take any of the oil that's out of this blue line, and it'll push it into the system. Alright, so now what we do, guys, is we wait a half an hour, and there's really nothing else I can do or show you while we're waiting, so I'm just going to walk away from this thing for a half an hour and come back, and we'll put the refrigerant in it. Okay kids, it has been at least a half an hour, I'm shutting off this pump now. And close off this high side. Both closed now. Taking off the adapter from the pump. And that is the nice thing about having a shutoff valve, an internal shutoff valve here. If you didn't, what would happen, me taking this off from the pump, is I would have a yellow line that's full of atmospheric air, and then when I start blowing refrigerant in, I'm putting a little bit of air back in the system, which we don't want. So I was just sitting here reading your comments from today's upload, which was part 1 of this, and some funny comments. I really appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. One was wearing my flip-flops. You know, how am I going to be able to kick something when things go wrong? So that one was funny. Another one, 2 of you commented I got ripped off on buying this Jeep. That's funny too. Another one was, I forget how it was worded, but it had something to do with getting inside how nasty this was, and it was just funny. But anyway, I did pay $1,000 for this Jeep, and I know it is pretty beat up, but it's a southern vehicle. Remember I said that. Up here in the Rust Belt of PA, you cannot find a 1995 Jeep or this era Jeep that doesn't have holes in the frame and is totally destroyed. So the mileage did not scare me. I'll probably end up doing a lot to this. I do have to do upper ball joints, or an upper ball joint on this side, so I'm going to do upper and lower, and then the drive axle universal joint while I'm in there. I was actually going to film that with my brother. And then a track bar. It's a piece that connects to, I'm not sure the technical name for it. It is a member that attaches to the differential and then onto the frame. It's a stabilizer bar of some sort. So I have to do that, and then I need to align it. Anyway, I'm rambling. I appreciate you guys. This is, you know, reading your comments on part 1 right now as I'm doing part 2, which is pretty cool. Back to this. Sorry. We did the vacuum decay test already, so we're not worried about a leak in the system. We're good, and there's some safety issues here when it comes to charging an AC system, and one of the things we never ever want to do is charge from the high side with the compressor running. Now with the car off, I can charge from either side. It doesn't matter. And what I've done in the past to just get the refrigerant in quickly is I will open both up and charge from both sides with the car off. But again, compressor off, car off. But we won't do it that way. We'll go right into the low side like we're supposed to. And we will start. I'm using a can tap. I got this R134A can tap from Walmart, I think. It came with a hose and an adapter, but one of the things with these can taps you want to make sure you do, I've done this in the past, you want to make sure that that O-ring is inside of there before you thread it on, because they'll fall out and then you'll poke the hole and then you'll start losing refrigerant. So yeah, we don't want to do that. But the way the can tap works is you would wind this valve down, which extends the pin inside, and then you unwind it, and that opens up the passage. So we're not going to poke a hole yet, but we are going to attach that. And then from there, we go to the center nozzle. This might be where my adapter comes into play. It absolutely is. That does not thread on there. So pretty cool. Thank you guys from JB Tools for including this very important adapter. I'd have been pretty tweaked right now not being able to use my little can adapter. Okay, now when you charge with air conditioning, you need to understand that this refrigerant, this is considered a saturated vapor, and it's only a liquid when it's in a pressurized container. So if you charge with the can facing this way, what happens, there's a liquid level in the can and then there's vapor on top. And what you'll be doing is you'll be charging as a vapor, and as the vapor is released, more of the liquid boils off and turns into vapor, and you continue that process until the can is empty. That takes a very long time to do. So with the system empty and with the car off, we want to go the first can definitely charge as a liquid. So now my liquid is here, my vapor's on top. We'll get this liquid into this system as fast as we can, and what that will do is it will continue to run into the system until the pressure in the system equalizes the pressure in the can. And once that happens, you're not going to get any more in until you turn your AC compressor on. So let's talk about pressure in the can for a second. What pressure is in this can? The pressure in the can is dependent on the temperature outside. So there's a pressure temperature relationship with every liquid, and R134A has its own. We're not going to get into the specifics of that, but in general, if it's 70, it's about 75 degrees today. It's nice and cool for the first time in a long time. So 75 degrees outside, it's close to 75 psi in this can. And so this again will flow into the system until my gauge pressures read 75, and then nothing more is going to go in. So there's two ways to get more in. Number one would be turn the AC on, start the compressor, and then the low side pressure is going to drop, and that will allow me to put more pressure into the system. Another way is to get a bucket with hot water and just drop this into your bucket of hot water, which will take the outside temperature, right, the water, which is much hotter than outside, and it will heat the can and it will boil more liquid, which will increase the pressure, and it will allow you to get more in the system. So we can do it that way too. We could actually get all of the cans in the system by doing it that way if we wanted to. I'm not going to do it that way. I'll do it the standard way, standard for me, which is we're going to charge with the system running. But we have to be careful. We have to be careful. All right, let me grab something here real quick. Let's not be stupid about what we're doing, right? Safety glasses is a good thing when working around refrigerants. You never know when you can have a line blow off and cause some crazy stuff. All right, so both of my valves on the car, let me get you down here so you can see. Both of my valves down here are depressed, right? They're wound all the way in. My high side is closed. My low side right now is closed. My can has not been pierced yet. Fittings are all tight. I'm going to start by winding this down, which will poke a hole in the can. Okay? The hole is poked. Now, when I take it off, unwind it. Now that's open to here. Hopefully this valve is depressed, I'm hoping. We're going to charge as a liquid, so we'll hold it this way, and then I'm just going to open my low side. And you can see that that is going in. I opened that up all the way. You can actually see liquid refrigerant. I'm not sure that that's picking up on the camera. There's a little sight glass there. But remember which side I put the oil in, guys. I put the oil in the blue line, right? So right now what I'm doing is I'm really flushing that blue hose out. I'm putting all of that remainder of the oil back into the system, flushing the blue hose out, pushing it into the system. All right, again, so how much are we going to get into the system is dependent on the can. One of the things that you can do too when it's cold is just hold the can and use your body heat to help warm it up, and that works as well. You see, some guys will sit there and they'll shake the can. That does nothing. Shaking the can does nothing. The only thing it does is when you're holding the can and you're shaking it, you're warming it up. So just hold the can and you can heat the can, and we can get more in. And see what kind of pressures we get here in a second. That empty, I heard it. That emptied that entire can. That's awesome. And I'm about 70 psi on my gauges right now. Alright, and then there's 70 psi of residual pressure in here. You will lose some refrigerant. There's a couple different ways to do this. There isn't one exact right way. But what I like to do, I want to get as much of this out as I can. When I take this hose off, the one I want to take off, let's be clear about this. I'm going to leave this one on. I'm taking that one off because there's a check valve there. That's going to keep anything from going in or escaping. That check valve is important. So don't take it off here. Take it off here. You'll have some come out. It will go psh, right? But that remaining pressure that's in there, you cannot do anything about it. You're going to have some go to the atmosphere no matter what you do. But we want to get as much out of this as possible. So what we want to do is start the vehicle, get the compressor running, get our low side pressure to drop, and when that hits about 30 or so, that's when I'll close this valve and I'll take this off, and then I'll get my second can on there. Something else. Where we're charging is very, very important. If you look at this system, guys, I'm charging right here, right to the back of the compressor. This is my low side, this is my suction hose. This is the hose that I replaced. No? The one I replaced was the discharge hose. This suction hose, the direction of flow is this way. So look where this is, and look where the compressor is. You cannot put liquid into this compressor. You will ruin it. So what happens if you run the car and you're charging as a liquid, upside down, charging as a liquid? What happens when you're adding it this close to the compressor? There's a concern of liquid getting here. Now I want to add something. Look how long, you guys probably can't see this, look how long the yellow hose is. This yellow hose, it's probably a 5-foot hose, and the blue hose is every bit of 5 foot. So I have a 10-foot hose before it gets there. I probably, when I charge it, you'll watch me do it. I'll go vapor, liquid, I'll kind of move back and forth. So picture the liquid level in the can, and as I move it, you know, when I raise it, there's vapor, lower it, liquid. So I'll probably charge like that because it takes forever to charge as a vapor this way. If you were charging with a little short hose, let me go grab the one that this came with. If you're charging with this guy, right, look where you're at, plug this in here, look where the can is. You turn that can upside down with that short of a hose, you are going to slug this compressor with liquid, and you chance damaging this compressor, okay? You want to be careful. We don't want to hurt the compressor. So at this point, we're going to start the vehicle. We're going to add, as for safety, guys, a little can. Which way are you going to do it? Remind, just a review. You got a little short hose. Which way are we going to add with the car running? We want to add with the can in the upright position, okay? For me, with 10 foot of hose, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Enough talking, let's watch me do it now, right? Let's be sure. High side's closed, very important. Right now, let's close the low side off too. Those are down. Let's start it up. There should be enough refrigerant in it now to get this thing cycling. My pressures, I'm like almost about 10 psi. So watch this. What's in the can? We'll drain this can down. Watch the gauge. There's nothing but vapor in there right now anyway. We're at 10. Okay. Close that off. Take this piece off right here. Very, very little left in that can. Cool? That's one. Two more. This system takes 36 ounces. This thing stinks. I believe I have some fuel trim issues. I'm going to have to get a scan tool on this thing and do some troubleshooting. Alright. This center hose, how important is that check valve? If that check valve wasn't there, what would this center side stays shut. Do not open that high side. The can's getting very cold in my hand because as that refrigerant boils, it's absorbing heat. That's how air conditioning systems work. And again, I got 10 foot of hose, so I'm going to cheat it a little bit. Oh, it's leaking. Ah, my O-ring's bad here. That's not cool. This O-ring there was leaking out of the top of this. Alright, so now it's even more important for me, being that I have a small leak at the top of this valve, I gotta get this refrigerant in here. So I'm listening for any unusual noise, which would be slugging the compressor. I'm confident in what I'm doing because I have 10 feet of hose before it gets there. The blower motor inside of this just started making some horrendous noise. I heard it before. I think there's some a nest in there, actually, some mice. Shut that off for a sec. Yeah, something's in there. I shut it off, turned it back on, it's okay. And the blower only works on high too, which I told you guys we'll be doing a video on that. This can is freezing. Still have liquid. The reason I'm shaking it, guys, is I'm feeling the liquid level in the can. Shaking it does not get the refrigerant in any faster. I'm just doing that to feel the level. I actually have a sight glass I can watch too. Paying attention to my high side pressure, I'm about 175 psi. Day like today, 200, 225 maybe on the high once the system's fully charged. That high side pressure will be greatly dependent on the outside temperature, the humidity, the type of airflow that you have. I hear my electric fan running constantly. Just heard the blower motor start making some noise again. Definitely something living in that squirrel cage. Alright, my can is getting warm now, so it is now empty. You see my pressures, I'm about 20 psi on the low. This is a thermal expansion valve system, so the clutch does not cycle on and off like an orifice tube system would. Alright, being that I have a check valve here, I don't have to close my low side gauge. I can leave it open. And I'll show you that. If I take it off of here, I'll have an issue. I'll have refrigerant coming out, but I won't. Some there, nothing here. Check valve, okay? That blower. Last can. That's these little cheap ones you get at Walmart. The O-ring up here goes bad on these all the time, and I really need to get a better can tap, but it's working for me for now. Alright, so this is on, this is tight, my adapter's tight on here. I don't want any atmospheric air in my system. More importantly now, I don't want to lose any refrigerant. Once I put this valve on, it'll depress the Schrader in here. Okay, poke our hole. Low side is still open, high side is closed. Very pleased with the way this is going so far. We'll go as a vapor first. That's leaking bad now. I gotta, damn. That sucks. I'm gonna lose some of this can. Look at that. Look at that. Shit. There's nothing I can do. I was thinking of changing that O-ring before I did this one. What I need to do is get this in the system as fast as possible. Totally shot. Damn, that sucks. It's going to be low on refrigerant. I do not have a choice. Look at this. That's what happens when you get cheap can taps. That sucks so much right now. Well, I got these at Walmart. They were about $5 a can. I'm probably going to lose about half of this can from a cheap, crappy ass can tap. Charging as a full liquid right now. Again, 10 foot of hose, I'm good. I'm losing some of this refrigerant. Alright, that can is empty. Well, now you see what happens, guys, when you use a cheap can tap. One that I had sitting around for a long time. I'll show you what goes bad in these in a second. About 20 psi on my low side, 180-ish on the high. Probably lost half of that can, so I am a little low on charge. I'll pick up another can. Inside of this, there is an O-ring. It's a valve. O-ring between two washers. You can actually see a piece of that O-ring. See how it's like a little torn a little bit? What happens is when you use this thing, it's really only meant for like one-time use, because that O-ring is not designed to be rotated over and over and over again. This is a really common issue with these. I need to get myself a better can tap as I do this. That blower's making some crazy noise. I'm going to shut this off. Okay, cool. So good lesson on what not to do with these can taps is, you know, you can't use them too often, man. I could change that O-ring, but I'll end up having the same issue. Need a new can tap. Okay, pressure in the system is now going to equalize. You can see I have 150 still on the high and 30 and climbing on the low. And that'll take a while with these thermal expansion valves for system pressure to equalize. When you have an orifice tube type system, when you shut the AC off, you'll actually hear a psss. That's your high side bleeding off to your low. And that's really when your pressures will be high. And that, you know, I mentioned that with compressed air and not worrying about, you know, 150 pounds of pressure. But all right, one more piece I want to show you guys, and I think this one has served me well over the years too. I'm going to start this back up. I have my adapter off. It's important that you have a check valve when you do this last step, okay? But what I want is I want the least amount of pressure remaining in my gauges as possible. If I were to take this red line off, there's a lot of pressure in there still, and there's some liquid in there. I want to get it out of there, and here's how you can do it. Watch. Alright. Low side. Compressor's on. Low side dropped. High side's rising. Just shut off there because I have the blower off. So it will cycle if pressure gets too low on these systems. The reason that happened is the blower only works on high. It should stay running now that I have the blower on. Alright, so I've got about 20 on the low. Here's what I'm going to do. This is real important. First thing, take the high side fitting down here, unwind it. When you unwind this valve is now isolated from the system. If you want it, you can pop that off. I'm not going to. I'm going to leave it there. So I'm isolated from the system. It's very important to understand that. Next step I'm going to do is open my high side, which is going to put high side pressure all the way to the tip of this. That's why you need a check valve. Watch. All that liquid, look at all that. A whole bunch of liquid refrigerant that's sitting in here now. Alright, now what do you think I'm going to do with it? I'm going to pull it back into the low side. Low side's still attached down here. Watch this. Look at all that pressure. All that pressure on the low side. It's pulling. Well, here's what I'm doing. I'm pulling all the liquid refrigerant out of my high side line. I pulled it out of my center yellow hose. Now I'm left with 20 psi on the high, 20 psi on the low. Close both valves. Here's what I want to do now. I want to, with it running, take the low side, unwind it here now, 20 and 20, shut the car off. Sorry. 20 psi on the low side, right? Take that off, no pressure at all. Now we want to shut the car off. How much pressure is on this high side right now? About 150 psi. How much pressure is in my hose? 20. And I pop this off now. It'll get a big psht. If I wait for a couple of minutes, I can actually pull it off and not have an issue. But I'm okay with it. You ready? That's it. But how much? Let me ask you guys this: how much liquid refrigerant is left in my gauges? I'll tell you, 0. And how much, if you're not supposed to do this, technically speaking, you're supposed to recover what's the remaining refrigerant in your gauges into a recovery machine. How many of us actually do that? Well, that's up for debate. But the point is, if you're not recovering your refrigerant, if you do it this way, how much is left in here? Next to nothing. In fact, it's about as much that's left in the can when you're done and you pop it off and you hear that psh. In fact, I'll show it to you. Watch. And I'm not showing you the other way, because if I show you the other way, you're going to have a mad amount of refrigerant come out of this high side. But these are close. Here's your low side. Here's how much is left. Listen. Here's your center hose. Here's how much is left. And here's your high side. That is less than what's left in those cans. I'm okay with showing you that, even though I didn't recover it. We probably pulled about 2 ounces of refrigerant from that high side line and put it back into the low side of the system. That's a pretty cool test. But that's it, guys. I have to put a little bit more refrigerant in this. My pressures are a little bit low because I'm low on refrigerant. A half a can is really what I need. Oh, I guess I'll give you guys one more thing. That's if my thermometer still works. So let me get you a dash thermometer reading so you can see how nice and cold this air is. It actually feels really, really good. I probably won't bother putting any more refrigerant in it as long as I get good performance out of it. Let me take you inside. Okay, I'm not sure that I can trust this thermometer. It's been sitting in my toolbox for a really long time. But what we want to have, this was a standard that we would follow, is I want to see 40 degrees. There's that noise this thing makes. Alright, I am confident that this thermometer is wrong. You're just, it's my wife. What are you doing back there? You're going to be on video now.
I need to ask you something.
Okay, give me 1 second. You're just, guys, listen. You're going to have to take my word on it that it's cold. This thermometer's garbage. I know for a fact that I didn't have 30-degree discharge air. I've never seen 30-degree discharge air. But what you do as a standard, and it really depends on how hot it is outside. But if you have a system, I'm not sure what is it, 30 degrees maybe? If it's 90 degrees, you should have, 60 degrees of discharge air. But when the humidity's low and the interior temperature is cooled down and you pick recirc, which would be max AC, that's taking the inside air and recirculating it, I want to see 40 degrees of discharge air, somewhere close to that. And another way to do this is when you turn it on, if you put the blower on high, you'll get trained to it, but you want to feel a biting cold. So when you put your hand next to it, I usually use the back of my hand. The front of your hand is less sensitive, so the back of your hand, you want to feel a biting cold. And if you feel that, then you should be good. And if you don't, then you might need to do a little bit more working to figure out why. There's a lot of stuff to consider when you have warm discharge air. Temperature blend doors are a problem, heater controls and things like that, and then of course pressure problems. So I plan on doing a lot more AC coming up, and again, this is my tow vehicle for my RV. That's why I bought this piece of crap, but it'll be fun. And I got a whole bunch of videos to show you guys on the RV too. So I want to hear your thoughts. I didn't hear anybody's thoughts on that. If you guys are okay with me putting that stuff on this channel, I want to hear from you. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you next time.